Hi guys, it's Emma AITA, your favorite AI slop tuber. Before we jump into today's video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks so much for your support. Now, let's get right into the video. AITA for secretly selling my husband's comic book collection to pay for our baby's medical bills. I, 32 female, never thought I'd be the kind of person to keep secrets from my husband, let alone do something that might be considered unforgivable by some. But when your baby is sick, when you're looking at medical bills stacked higher than your kitchen counter, and when insurance refuses to cover life-saving treatment because of some obscure clause, something changes in you. You stop thinking in neat categories of right and wrong and start thinking in terms of survival, of time, of risk, of what you're willing to. My husband, Ben, 35 male, and I have been together for 9 years, married for 4. He's a gentle soul, patient, nerdy in the best way, endlessly curious. I'm a bit more grounded. I'm a pediatric nurse and have always been the one who handles the schedules, the bills, the adulting. Ben works as a graphic designer for a small agency and freelances on the side. We live modestly, a 2-bedroom rental, used cars, budget vacations, nothing flashy. Just a life we built carefully, day by day. One thing that's always been part of Ben's world, long before I came into the picture, is his comic book collection. He's been collecting since he was 12. It's not just stacks of random issues either, it's methodical, organized, even curated. He has entire runs of vintage Marvel, some rare independent pressings, and several issues signed by artists I've never heard of, but who apparently are legends in the comic world. He doesn't just collect, he protects. Acid-free sleeves, temperature-controlled. I used to tease him about it early in our relationship. This stuff takes up more space than your clothes, I'd say, or, if there's ever a fire, I know you're saving the comics before me. But deep down, I admired it. There was something beautiful about how much he cared, how deeply he connected to those stories and characters, and for years I wouldn't have dreamed of touching that room. Then Mia was born. Our daughter came into the world 5 weeks early. She was tiny but strong. Her first cry was hoarse and strained, but it was there. We named her Mia after my grandmother. And for the first 3 weeks, things seemed fine. Fragile, but okay. Then came the coughing fits, the wheezing, the fear in her eyes as she struggled to breathe. We were in and out of hospitals, specialists, tests, diagnoses. Eventually, infantile pulmonary fibrosis, rare, terrifying and treatable, but only with an experimental therapy. And insurance wouldn't touch it. They called it investigational, even though it had shown promising results in similar cases. Out of network. Denied. The full treatment course would cost close to $18,000 up front, a number that hit me like a freight train. We didn't have that kind of savings. Our emergency fund had already been battered by the NICU stay. My income barely covered our day-to-day, and Ben's freelance work had dried up in the chaos of new parenthood. I remember staring at that invoice, Mia sleeping on my chest and just cracking open inside. I'd already called everyone, the hospital, charity programs, social workers, but even the most generous aid options wouldn't be fast enough. We had weeks, not months. That night, as Ben rocked Mia in the nursery, I walked into the comic room for the first time in months. And I made a decision. I sat on the floor in Ben's comic room for nearly 2 hours that night, just staring at the shelves. Thousands of issues, some still sealed in plastic wrap, others carefully cataloged in binders and boxes. I ran my fingers along the spines like I was in a sacred library. There were little notes stuck to some sleeves, things like signed by Claremont, NYCC 2014, or misprint, super rare, look into value. Every inch of the room breathed his passion, his identity, and I felt like the worst human being alive because I had already made up my mind. I told myself that if I could just sell a few of the high-value ones, just enough to get us started, maybe I could replace them one day, or tell him after the fact, or never, depending on how everything shook out. But Mia needed this treatment. Every day without it was a risk, a gamble with her lungs, with her development, with her life. And I wasn't going to lose my daughter to spare my husband some heartbreak. So, I started discreetly. I took careful photos of some issues I knew were valuable, mostly older first editions, key storylines, the signed stuff. I joined a few collector forums using a throwaway account and reached out to some high-end sellers and collectors. I didn't want to go to eBay or Facebook Marketplace. I needed someone who would pay fast, in cash, no questions asked. To my surprise, the response was immediate. Apparently, Ben had several books that were highly sought after, a 1963 Avengers issue that one guy practically begged for, a signed Spider-Man number 300 that had skyrocketed in value over the past few years, and a near-mint X-Men giant size #1 that one woman drove 4 hours to see. She handed me a wad of bills, barely glancing at me. "You sure you want to let this go?" she asked. I smiled like it didn't cost me anything. "Yes." In total, over the course of a few discrete weeks, I raised just over $14,000. I cried in the car after the last sale. I had just enough with our leftover savings to start Mia's first 2 rounds of treatment. Ben never noticed. At first. To be fair, he was utterly consumed with Mia. The fear, the appointments, the sleep deprivation. He wasn't exactly counting issues in his collection every day. He did walk in once while I was boxing a few things up, and I told him I was organizing for better storage. He believed me, even thanked me for trying to help, though I could tell he was a little weirded out by me being in his space. Still, we pressed on. Mia began treatment. The results were slow, but promising. Her breathing stabilized, her color improved, her sleep patterns evened out. For the first time in weeks, we allowed ourselves to exhale. And then Ben found the invoice. It wasn't even the main treatment invoice. It was a receipt from one of the specialty pharmacies we used that had been stuffed in a side pocket of my work bag. I came home from a night shift and found him sitting at the kitchen table, holding it like it was a death notice. "Why does this say $6,000? He asked. I froze. I hadn't rehearsed for this moment. I had hoped it would never come, but it did. I could feel it like a wall slamming shut behind me. I sat down slowly, watching his face contort between confusion and fear and something darker. "Ben," I said carefully, "we needed it. Mia needed it, and we couldn't wait." He blinked. "But how did we even pay for that? We don't have that kind of money." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. His eyes narrowed. "Tell me you didn't," I whispered. "Just a few of the rare ones, the valuable ones. Nothing you couldn't. You sold my collection?" I don't think I'll ever forget that sound. Not just the volume of it, but the pain. The betrayal. He stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor like a scream. His hands were shaking. "You went into my room, touched my things, and sold them, without even talking to me?" I wanted to defend myself, to explain, but all I could say was, "Mia needed it." He stormed out, didn't come home that night. And I sat there on the kitchen floor, holding the receipt, wondering if I had just saved my daughter and lost my husband in the same breath. Ben stayed at his brother's place for 3 days. I didn't know if he was going to come back. The house was too quiet without him, the kind of silence that vibrates. Mia's breathing monitor beeped softly in the background, a rhythmic reminder of what I had done and why. I didn't cry the first night, or the second. I think I was too numb, too locked into survival mode to process anything beyond whether or not I'd just imploded the foundation of our marriage. He texted me once on the second day, "We'll talk when I'm ready." The third night, I heard the key in the lock. I had just gotten Mia to sleep. I froze in the hallway. He walked in like a ghost, pale, eyes dark, mouth set in a hard line. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, like he was searching for some version of me he recognized and couldn't find. We sat across from each other in the living room. I didn't start. I let him speak first. "I cataloged my collection," he said, voice flat. "I know exactly what's missing. You sold my Action Comics number 252. You sold the Watchmen signed first print. You sold Spider-Man 300. Do you have any idea what those meant to me?" I nodded. "Yes, I do. That's why it was so hard." He shook his head. "Number, you don't. Because if you really understood, you wouldn't have done it. You could have come to me. We could have figured something out together." I leaned forward, barely holding it together. "Ben, we didn't have time. She was getting worse. Every day mattered. And insurance kept giving me the runaround. I called everyone. I even applied for charity programs. But the timeline, they wouldn't approve fast enough. I was terrified." "I was too," he snapped. "Do you think I wasn't scared for her? For us? Do you think I would have chosen comics over her?" "No," I said softly. But I couldn't risk the answer. Not when her lungs were failing. He rubbed his face, trembling. "You had no right to make that call without me. It wasn't just money. It was me. That collection. Those were 20 years of my life. Things I saved for, hunted for, dreamed about. It's not about the money." I know it's not. It was about meaning, identity. But I was watching our baby struggle to breathe. I didn't have the luxury of hesitating. Silence hung in the room for a long time. Then he said more quietly, "Do you even regret it?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Number, I regret that it hurt you, deeply. But if I had to go back and choose again, I'd still pick Mia, every single time. That broke something in him. He looked away. I thought he might get up and walk out again. But instead, he cried. Real, guttural, painful crying. I sat beside him slowly, and we didn't say anything for a while. We just sat, mourning different things. Him, the pieces of his past that I had stolen. Me, the guilt of choosing my daughter over my partner's trust and legacy. He slept in the guest room that night. For the next week, we barely spoke except about Mia. Her treatment continued. Her numbers improved. Her little coups started returning. I started seeing light in her again. And in the middle of all that, I was grieving the marriage I thought we had. Simple, trusting, indestructible. One night, Ben came into the living room holding a worn comic binder, one of the few I hadn't touched. He sat beside me on the couch and opened it. This one, he said, pointing to a sketch of a young Superman, was the first I ever bought. I was 12. My dad took me to this weird little shop downtown. He died that year. I used to read this when I missed him. My throat clenched. I'm not telling you this to guilt you, he continued. Just so you understand. This collection wasn't just paper and ink. It was memory, anchors, things that reminded me of who I was before life got complicated. I took his hand. I know. And I hate that I touched any of it without asking. I can never undo it. I just hope one day you can forgive me. He didn't respond, but he didn't pull away either. The following months were quiet, slow, and uncertain, like walking across a frozen lake, unsure if the ice would hold. Ben and I stayed together, but something fundamental between us had cracked. We still laughed sometimes. We still shared morning coffee while Mia napped in her swing. But every time I walked past the closed door to the comic room, which he now locked, I felt the ghost of that betrayal settle on my shoulders again. Ben never yelled again after that night. He didn't throw things. He didn't try to punish me or guilt me. But he became more reserved, distant. I could tell he was trying to rebuild something internally. Trust, identity, control. And I tried to give him space while also being present, honest, and patient. We both knew we needed therapy, but he wasn't ready. I didn't push. Mia's treatment worked. Her condition stabilized, and for the first time in her short life, she started hitting milestones. She sat up. She giggled. She reached for our faces with pudgy hands and gave the sweetest gummy smiles. Every good day with her felt like a victory we'd stolen back from the brink, and also a reminder of the price we paid for it. One night, maybe 6 months after the incident, Ben came home from a walk and placed a small box on the table. Inside were 2 sealed comic issues, Fantastic Four #1, a modern reprint, and Ms. Marvel #1, one of the new runs. They weren't worth much, at least not financially, but they were pristine. And when I looked up at him, confused, he said, "They're for Mia. Her starter kit." That was the first time I cried in front of him since it all happened. "I'm trying," he said simply. "To forgive, to understand. I still feel robbed some days, like someone died. But I also know you were trying to save our daughter, and you did." We started therapy the next month. It wasn't easy. Our counselor helped us untangle not just the betrayal, but the deeper layers: control, fear, childhood traumas, communication gaps. We had to learn how to trust again, slowly, how to sit with our differences and still choose each other. At one point, the therapist asked Ben if he would ever rebuild his collection. He said he didn't know. Maybe, but differently. More for the joy than the completeness. Eventually, I came clean about exactly what I sold and how. I gave him the names of the buyers, the receipts, everything. Some of the items were irreplaceable, but others he managed to recover in bits and pieces through collector friends. He even started a small comic blog documenting the process, not just of collecting again, but of healing through it. Mia turned 1 last week. We threw a quiet party, just a few friends, some balloons, and a cake she mostly smashed with her hands. Ben gave her a soft plush Superman doll and read her a bedtime story from an old issue of Young Justice. After she fell asleep, we sat on the porch watching the sunset. "She's here," I whispered. "She's alive because of what we did." Ben nodded, eyes on the horizon. "I know. I've never stopped being grateful, even when I hated what you did." "I never stopped loving you," I said. "I never stopped either." So Reddit, here's the question I've wrestled with in therapy and silence and sleepless nights. AITA for secretly selling my husband's comic collection, something deeply personal and important to him. To pay for our daughter's medical treatment, knowing it would devastate him, but believing we didn't have time for discussion or compromise. Was I selfish? Was I wrong? Or was I just a mother doing whatever it took to keep her baby alive? You tell me.